Well, hello again, and welcome to Bold Women Lawyers Interview Show. We have got a great show today. I am so excited for our guest, Janet Falk. Janet is a public relations guru and is going to talk about that experience that we've all had as lawyers when you see a lawyer you know being interviewed on TV or by a reporter about a topic of which you are a great expert. And you're thinking, why her and not me? Why didn't they call me? I would do a great job. And I certainly would love this publicity. So Janet is here today to talk about that and to tell you what it takes for you to be the person that gets called instead of the lawyer whose interview you now have to watch. So Janet, welcome. We're so glad to have you here. And I am very excited myself to hear what you can tell us about how can I be the lawyer that gets on TV. So I'm going to turn it over to you and let you start telling us your tips and your information.
Great. So thank you so much, Sharon, for inviting me today to speak with you and your audience. As you may recall, I work with attorneys who have a small firm or a solo practice. And one of the reasons that they come to me is because they want to get media attention. And there's a lot of reasons why attorneys want to be mentioned in the news. And it's not only to get new business, which I'm sure, Sharon, you can appreciate. One of the reasons that you might want to be seen in the news is that you may have filed a case in court. And when you generate a news story, it puts pressure on opposing counsel. And then they're going to want to settle because they're going to look very bad to everyone that needs the news story and that matters to them. So that's one reason why attorneys want to be seen in the news, is to get a story that will put pressure on opposing counsel. Another reason is because you want to highlight the importance of a change in the law or a change in a municipal ordinance or a trend that's happening in the industry. And so you want to show that you have your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the marketplace or in the local area. And so that people should be contacting you so that they can get that information and then move ahead with their individual lives or with their business. So whether you have insight into trust in estates or tax or employment issues in your municipality, you want to show that you are going to help other people, whether it's individuals or business owners or even corporate executives. And what they care about is how they can save time, save money, and make more money. So if they say, oh, look, I read what Sharon Christie had to say about disability issues, I ought to share this information with my colleague or with my family member, and then they can get in touch with Sharon because she will be looking out for their interests. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, you can also be in front of your many contacts, people that you went to law school with, people that you clerked with, people who were at your previous firm, people who were on the other side of the transaction or the other side of the litigation, people who served on a committee with you at the local or the state bar association. Just think of the many contacts that you have in your circles. And when they see you in the news, then you will come to mind and they will be thinking of you. And maybe there's some opportunity for them to refer business to you or to ask you for more insight because they're not as up to date on whatever that issue might be. Now, maybe you're a growing firm and you want to attract more associates or paralegal or a lateral partner. Doesn't everyone want to work for that hot firm that's always getting quoted in the news? And so being seen, quoted, talking about an important issue will attract that kind of attention. One more thing, and that is maybe you serve on the board of a nonprofit. Many attorneys do. And this way you can be looking out for and advocating for their interest, whether it's higher education or social justice or the environment. And other organizations that are like-minded will want to partner with your nonprofit and then advance the cause. And finally, I often say, reporters call the people they know, and they don't call someone that they've never heard of. Well, Sharon, who do you think conference organizers call? They call the people that they read about in the news, because they know that if they're in the news, they have their finger on what's hot in the marketplace and what people need to know. And that's the speaker that they want to contact. So I think you get the picture now, Sharon, that it's not just about getting new clients. Right. It's about being seen as the attorney who understands what's happening. And you can be attracting employees, attracting interest of speakers, keeping in touch with your referral sources, and being in front of your many, many contacts. Not to mention, as I said, the news story that will put pressure on opposing counsel.
And it's interesting, all of the ways that being interviewed helps you, I think many of which we tend not to think about. We just think about, oh, it's media exposure and clients will call. But in the client realm, and as well as you said, conference organizers, being in the media gives you that imprimatur of, she's the expert. That's why they went to her in the first place, which is incredibly helpful. So you said reporters call the people they know. So Janet, how do they get to know me or a lawyer out there in solo practice who would love to get some media coverage? What do you do?
Okay, the tool that I use is a media profile. And I believe we're going to include a link to the media profile in the show notes or in the comments.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So what a media profile is it's not your bio. It's not all the places that you've worked. It's not your representative matters, and it's not your publications. All of that information is on your website and on your LinkedIn profile, and anyone can find it there. A media profile is an encapsulated description that introduces you to the reporter in an organized way. So at the top, you're going to have all your contact information, your name, the name of your firm, your phone number, your email address, your website URL, and your street address, because you don't want this to be mistaken for some sort of advertisement. And the ABA rules and the model rules of whatever state you're in point out the difference between advertising and editorial. So put your street address in there too, just to be safe. Now, the next part of your media profile is going to be 3 to 5 sentences that briefly describe your background. You're a transactional attorney, you're a litigator, and you focus on these kinds of transactions or these kinds of litigations, where you're licensed to practice, and what industry you work in, whether it's cosmetics or environment or, civil rights, whatever. Now you're going to talk about a little more detail of the kinds of situations that you encounter with your clients. So you might talk about environmental cleanup costs or sexual harassment cases or, wage and hour issues and so on. Mm-hmm. Now, this all sets the stage of what you have done in the past. But reporters know what already happened. They want to know what's going to happen before it's happening. And this is where you step up to the plate. Because of your deep knowledge of the industry or of the local area, then you can point to trends or issues or situations that are looming on the horizon. And only a sophisticated attorney who can explain technical issues in clear language accessible to the non-attorney is going to be able to explain this. So say, for example, you're an employment attorney and your local community has recently passed an ordinance that people can no longer ask for prior salary in a job interview situation. Okay. And this is going to go into effect on April 30th. So you could be announcing, what are the impacts of this change in job interview situations where you can no longer ask about previous salary. So this is an example of something that is looming on the horizon. And, employers of small businesses might not be paying attention to this. And therefore, you can highlight it and flag it to the reporter. So you have your contact information, you have a general description of your background, you have a little more detail of the kind of things that you cover, and then you have this 3 to 5 bullet points of trends or insights or hot issues that are flying below the radar and people need to know more about them. Now, the next part is I like to include a quote so that you're not just a piece of paper, but the reporter gets the idea of what it would be like if they were in a conversation with you and what you might say to them. So you want to have something, a little bit colorful, a little personality in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last part is your contact. So if you don't take your own phone calls because you're a very busy attorney and you have an office manager or paralegal or a public relations consultant, then any reporter who wants to go talk to you should go through this contact in order to arrange the conversation. Now, in the media profile that I am sharing with your listeners and viewers, there is a worksheet. So not only do you see the sample of how this might look, but you have a worksheet that you can fill out, and then you can contact me, and I offer a complimentary strategic communications consultation. And for 30 minutes, we will look over your media profile and see what it is that you have prepared and who it is that you could be reaching out to. And I think that, with this tool, then reporters will be, then viewers will be able to identify what are the hot topics that they want to talk about, and we'll figure out where are these reporters located and get in touch with these reporters.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's fabulous. That's incredibly helpful. And I see that your contact information is on there also, but I'm going to post that for anybody who's looking now that might want to give you a call even before they have completed the worksheet. So that's incredibly helpful. Can you tell us, Janet, tell me a little bit about the work that you do, how you work with lawyers, and what they could expect if they were working with you?
Of course. So first of all, I meet people through a variety of ways, as do we all. Some are referred to me, some hear me on a podcast or an interview like this, or they read something that I've written. I have a monthly newsletter, and I know that it gets shared widely among the readers to their contacts. I don't always know who those people are, but occasionally they do turn up. So there are a number of ways that people find out about me and how I can help them. The first thing that I'm going to do is figure out what are your goals? What is it that you would like to accomplish, right? Do you have a case that you're going to file and you want to generate a news story, as I mentioned before? Do you want to become better known in your industry or in your community, and for what reasons? And so we'll talk about what is your goal. Then I'm going to look at what are your assets. What is your website? What is your LinkedIn profile? Where have you been quoted before? Do you have any items that you give away as information for free so that people will be able to download something from your website? Maybe they leave their email address so you can follow up with them. And then they have this branded content that you have created, whether it's 5 best practices or 3 do's and 3 don'ts, or some other quiz so that people can evaluate their circumstance. And we'll take a look at that and see what the state of that is. And in doing all this, I get a picture of who you are as an attorney, what is your practice, who are you trying to reach out to, and so on. And so this is part of a communications audit, where we look at where you are now, what are the tools at your disposal, and how we can address them, because I want to make sure that they are commensurate with your status as an attorney. You know, there are some people who underpromise, and then there are some people who overpromise.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that whatever you have that you are sharing with the outside world in terms of your digital assets is really commensurate with your status in the community and your understanding as an attorney. So before I'm going to be introducing anyone to a reporter, I want to make sure that their website and their LinkedIn profile and so on are all polished and up to date, because a reporter is going to look at those assets and then they're going to decide whether or not they're going to want to talk to you. So if that is not going to pass muster, then you're not really helping yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But then it can go on from there. I mean, I've helped attorneys with presentations. I've helped them publish articles in the legal press and in the non-legal industry press that are read by their clients, and, you know, a variety of other things.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let me get back to the reporters for a moment. And I know you were talking about in the media profile, you would have some bullet points. It sounded like talking about maybe events that were current when you submitted the or created the profile.
Mm-hmm.
Now, first of all, is it something that you would want to update periodically to talk about more current events, or is it just an example of some of the things that you're commenting on that happen to be current at the time you created the media profile?
Well, I would suggest that a media profile is good for 3 or 4 months, because trends and issues don't really change all that much. So, you know, you can introduce yourself to reporters and say, you know, these are the topics that I think are most interesting at this point in time. And then as conditions change and evolve, you know, once a municipal ordinance about, you know, salary requirements and so on is, you know, put into effect, it's not a hot topic anymore. So you're going to have to come up with something else. So a media profile is something that's going to be good for 3 or 4 months. Now, it may be that, you know, suddenly, spontaneously, something comes up, right? So it may be that there's a hot case in the news and you would like to comment on that. So then you come up with something that's slightly different, and it's going to be more targeted so that reporters will want to talk to you, because this is a hot topic and they have to figure out, you know, who is the resource that is going to be able to explain it and explore it with them. And if you like, I can give an example of this.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, so I'm sure you remember a couple of years ago, the Boston Marathon bombing case, right?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
And so that took place in Boston. And as you would expect, many attorneys from the Boston area were appearing on local and national TV and in the print media talking about the case and how it was proceeding. I mean, everyone was interested in this case, right?
Exactly.
So if you look at the verdict, the day that the verdict came out, there were some attorneys from McDermott, Will, and Emery who were talking about the case, and you would expect that they're in the Boston area. But I saw some articles that quoted this attorney from Miami. And you're thinking, well, what does he know about the case? Well, you know, the attorneys from McDermott, Will, and Emery weren't in the courtroom either, right? They were just talking about it from their experience outside. So the media profile, as I mentioned before, is designed to answer 3 questions. So these are the 3 questions you should have in mind. The first one is why you, and why not anyone else? So not your colleague down the hall and not your competitor across town. And then the second question is why now? Right? Why is this all of a sudden interesting now? Because you didn't contact the reporter last week or last month, right? And then the third question is, why should anyone care about what you have to say? Okay. So why you, why now, and why should anyone care? Now let's apply this to the situation I just mentioned about the verdict of the Boston Marathon bombing case. Right? So this attorney from Miami, why you? He was a former federal prosecutor who had tried terrorism cases. Why you? Because he was someone who had exactly the relevant experience. Former federal prosecutor who had tried terrorism cases. Okay. Why now? Because the verdict came out and everybody's very interested in this very big case. And why should people care? Because they want to understand what was the reasoning behind the prosecutor's approach and what was the reasoning behind the jury's thinking. Okay. So that's an example of something that is a little bit different than a media profile. It's my guess, of course, I wasn't there, but it's my guess that the reporters who were following and covering this case received a message that said, source, former federal prosecutor for comment on Boston Marathon bombing verdict. And the case, and then the comment would have been, I'm a former federal prosecutor, I've tried terrorism cases, and here is my phone number, and here is my cell number, and here's my email address. Call me at any hour of the day or night. I am available. If it's guilty, it means this. If it's not guilty, it means that. I'm looking forward to speaking with you. Right? And so that is how one attorney from Miami may have stepped forward and introduced himself. Why you? Why now? And why should people care? Using a version of a media profile that says, I am available for comment.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Wow. I would never even have thought of that, but promote yourself for your area of expertise, particularly when you know this is coming, or even sometimes when you don't. I've always been, for example, when somebody famous dies and it comes out that they didn't have a will, a lot of savvy trust and estate lawyers jump right on that and start talking. They obviously have made themselves available to reporters about how dangerous this is and why, this famous person didn't have one and it's going to be difficult and here's why, and then why everybody needs one. You have to have this taken care of. And I've always been struck by that. Like, how did they jump? How did they be able to get that interview right away? But now I know. Now I know what was going on. Yeah.
Right. So the question then is, how do you identify these reporters and how do you get their email address?
Yes. How do you? That's a great question. Yes.
So the first place you're going to look is your local newspaper, right? Or the metropolitan newspaper or the national newspaper, like the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, LA Times, New York Times, and so on. Mm-hmm. So that's one place. Then you're also going to look at industry magazines, right? Because they're going to cover things from a slightly different angle, for what's important for that industry. And then there are other places, newsletters and so on online. And then the newswire services, Bloomberg, Associated Press, and Reuters. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's start with the newspapers. Many newspapers have at the bottom of the article, the online, not in print, but at the bottom of the article online, they have the name of the reporter and their email address, right? So I'm in New York, and I'll just give an example. It could be jfalk@nydailynews.com or jfalk@nypost.com for the Daily News and the New York Post. Mm-hmm. So right there at the bottom of the newspaper article, you can see the reporter's email address. That's easy. Okay. I recently learned that the Washington Post no longer does this, but if you subscribe to the Washington Post and you want to be seen there, then it's first initial, last name @washpost.com.
There you go. That's
easy. So that's the Washington Post. All right. So now let's talk about industry magazines. Most industry magazines in print and online have what they call the masthead. The masthead is the list of all the reporters and all the editors. And it explains, what they cover. Do they cover retail? Do they cover finance? Do they cover travel? Whatever it is. And it often has their email address and sometimes even their phone number. Oh. So right there in the magazine is a table of contents, so to speak, a directory of the reporters and editors, what they cover, and their email address, and sometimes their phone number.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so say you come across a reporter and you don't have the magazine in front of you, and you can't find the email address in the newspaper article. You can look for them on Twitter. Sharon, many reporters put their email address in their Twitter bio. Why do you think?
So you can contact them, I would assume.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you contacted a bunch of reporters directly on Twitter, just putting it out there in the Twitter sphere, then the reporter knows that all their competitors are getting the same idea. Right? But if you send it to them by email, then they think that they're getting it privately. They don't know that you're writing to all the other reporters.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So look on Twitter and see if they have their email address right there in their Twitter bio.
Mm-hmm. That's
Okay.
great idea.
All right. Then here's another place. Many reporters aggregate their news stories on a dedicated website. So if you look up the reporter and you try and find them online and you find that they have their own website where they have all their articles, guess what? They have a notation there on their contact page to use this email address or to use this form. So in the newspaper article at the bottom, in the masthead of the magazine, in their Twitter bio, or on their dedicated personal website, you can find the email address of many, many, many reporters. Now, if you can't find it there, then you might know a friendly public relations consultant who subscribes to one of the online media directories, which are very expensive, so I don't encourage anyone to subscribe. Mm-hmm. And you can ask this person for one or two email addresses, and they'll help you out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. That's a wealth of information. I had no idea that it could be that easy to locate a reporter. Wow.
Right.
That's
and if you
great.
can't find them there, you can find them on LinkedIn, which I don't recommend because you want to have another kind of conversation on LinkedIn. But in any event, you can try and contact them there.
You could try it. Okay. And if you are interested in, pursuing this and trying to get some traction with reporters, is it the kind of situation where you should email repeatedly, or how frequently would you get in touch? Or is it sort of a one and done, here I am, this is my area of expertise?
Well, it's a question of timing, actually. I mean, you're introducing yourself to a reporter to say, I know you're interested in covering X subject, and I'm also interested in this subject, and I'm happy to speak with you about this and that, and here are some hot topics I see on the horizon. Here's my media profile, and I look forward to a conversation with you, right? So the reporter is going to receive this, and they're going to say, okay, great, I have this person, I'm going to add them to my database, or, wow, I never thought about this idea before. This is a new angle on the situation. Let me ask my editor and see if I can get approval to write a story about this, okay? So it's kind of the timing. You introduce yourself, and either in the moment, it's going to strike a chord, or they're going to put it on hold and pursue it at some later date. Now, as issues continue to come to the fore, every 3 or 4 months, I mentioned you can get back in touch with the reporter. But what can you do in the interim period? Well, one thing you can do is you can follow the reporter's stories. And when they write something that you find interesting, you can share it on LinkedIn, or you can share it on Twitter, or you can share it on Facebook, and then provide some commentary about why you think this is valuable. Don't just say, here's a story. Say, this is an interesting story because it focuses on X. And moreover, and then you add some value to that conversation there. Now, if a reporter has written a story and you have a different take and a different angle, let me just finish up with that point. So here you are, you're using the link to the reporter's article online, and you're sharing it through your social media channels to another audience and adding value there. that means that there's going to be more clicks on that article. So that wins favor with the reporter because they know that the article is going to be read more widely. Now, let's say that you disagree or you want to amplify in a way that the reporter overlooks something because, they couldn't go into very much depth. It was a short article and there's other aspects that they weren't able to take into account. Then, you can write to the reporter and say, congratulations, enjoyed your article on X. Perhaps because of the constraints of time and space, you weren't able to consider point 1, point 2, point 3. If you're going to do a follow-up article, I'm happy to talk with you about it. Right?
Oh,
So
great idea. Yeah.
Don't criticize the reporter and
No,
say, why didn't you? Instead say, because of the constraints of time and space, you may have not been able to discuss this. And the reporter probably knows that they weren't able to discuss it, but because of time and space, they couldn't. And so now you're saying you're available for a follow-up article. The reporter is not going to write that article again and quote you, right? Because it's already done, right? Exactly. But instead, you want to team up with the reporter, be more helpful to the reporter. And by pointing out, additional aspects, or by, as I said, circulating the article so that more people will see it with your value-added comment, right? Then you're driving more clicks to the reporter. And so, reporters do notice when they're being when their news story is being circulated, and they do appreciate hearing that there's more to be discussed on the topic. And as I said, they may be well aware that they weren't able to say everything that they might have liked to because of time and space constraints. So that's how you can keep in touch with the reporter by, every 3 or 4 months, you update your media profile. And then in between, be suggesting, another idea that would be a follow-up article, and by circulating articles that they've already written. And it may be that you yourself write something, you might write an article or you might write a client alert. And because the reporter was interested in X subject, then you can send it as a link. Don't send attachments, because a lot of time attachments gets caught up in the spam of the media outlets system. So you don't want that to happen. It'll just get lost there. So send something as a link. And in the worst way, you can always put it in a Dropbox folder and then send the link to that. Right? I mean, and if reporters don't know you already, they may not click on the link. But if they've been introduced to you before through your media profile, then you stand a better chance of them clicking on that link, showing again that you are a reliable, authoritative, and accessible source. You have your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the industry, and you're showing how you want to be more helpful to their readers by explaining, difficult technical issues.
Wow, you are a wealth of information, and that has been incredibly helpful. I really appreciate it. I've taken a ton of notes. You've made me think about things that I just never would have thought of in terms of where a reporter's interest might be and how I could help them, be a better reporter and get them the information that they need, and also help myself by getting some exposure through them. So, wow, Janet, this has been terrific. I really appreciate everything that you have brought to us today. And we are going to put the link up in the chat, but we're also going to put it in the replays, because there are always multiple replays. So we're going to put that in LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube and all the places that it's being pushed out to. So, but let me put up again your contact information so that there's your phone number and your email, so that anybody who is watching and wants to get in touch with you directly, that's the way that they can do it. And I hope they do, because I know that you are able to help lawyers successfully make their contacts with the appropriate reporters. And that's a win-win for both the reporter and the lawyer. So What could be better?
Right.
What could be better than that? Yeah.
Right. And if reporters call the people they know, they call them more than once.
Yes, I would think, because once they get to know you, it's like, oh, this is a reliable person. I'm gonna pick up the phone or get the email or send the text or however they're going to contact you, and I'm going to get this person on board again. So
right. I want to point out one more thing, Sharon.
Yeah.
That is, being in the media is not one and done. Because if I don't see that news article, if I don't see that segment on TV, and not everything that's on TV gets recorded and recycled through their YouTube and replays, it's as if it didn't happen. So what people ought to be thinking about is how they can, what I call, merchandise, and take that media mention and share it across other platforms. So, for example, if you have been quoted in a news story, then you can make a LinkedIn post about it and say, this is a hot topic, and explain it and say, see here. And then you can have a link that goes to the news article. I would encourage you to observe the intellectual property and copyright issues and make a copy of the article and put it on your website so that people can see it. You can also make that a part of your LinkedIn profile. You can refer to your news mention in your monthly or quarterly newsletter so that people who are your subscribers will see where you were quoted in the news. You can also put it on, your Facebook page and, other social media accounts. Think about that topic. If it's such a hot topic, maybe it deserves to be a panel discussion or a workshop. And who could you be partnering with? You could do it alone, or you could partner with a colleague who is a complementary practice, whether it's an attorney or an accountant or a financial advisor or a human resources professional, or a client. Maybe you want to partner with a client and, give some sort of presentation, be on a podcast together. Maybe you can turn some of that article into an article for an industry publication, because this is a hot topic and more people need to know about it.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So these are all ways that you can be taking that news story and what I call merchandising it and sharing it through other means so that more people will see it. Now, one more thing, and Sharon, I bet you send 100 emails a day, right?
Probably. Yes. Yes. Right. Good guess.
So think about your email signature. It has your name. It has the name of your firm, Bold Women Lawyers. It has your email address. It has your URL. And it could have a link to an article that you were mentioned in.
Yeah.
So that more people will be seeing that you were quoted in the news talking about this hot issue. So I hope the viewers understand that just as you've introduced yourself to the reporter as a reliable source, you want to be showing the love to the reporter of sharing the article, and think of all the places where you could be sharing that article: your newsletter, your website, your LinkedIn profile, your LinkedIn post, your other social media activity, making it an article, making it a workshop or a presentation, and so on. Your email signature, if I didn't mention that.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a great idea. And I would have not thought of that, putting it in the email signature, but that's a tremendous idea. So I will definitely remember that one for sure.
Great.
Well, listen, Janet, this has been great. I appreciate your time. I know how busy you are. I really appreciate your willingness to come on. And as I said, we're posting the link to the media profile and as well as your contact information. So thank you very much. And I'm going to look forward to taking some steps to see if I can't become a reporter's best friend at some point in the near future.
Great idea. Great idea.
All right. Thanks, Janet.
It was my pleasure.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.